What's up, Duke fans, and welcome to another episode of Duke Blue Central, where we are going to be breaking down a wild Duke basketball win against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. A team that beat Duke earlier in the season, was Duke's worst loss of the season, and boy did they come to play in Cameron Indoor Stadium today, giving Duke all that they could handle. But Duke pulls out a win 84-79 in a game that had so many storylines, a game that had so many swings of momentum, so many wild things happening. It's going to be a fun episode breaking it all down for you today. But I just want to start out here, like, what a gutsy win from Duke. And I'll say this later in the show, but look, I know this game wasn't supposed to be this close. You know, Georgia Tech has lost, I believe, 4 in a row before this game, but man, did they play well tonight. And I have to give it up to their coach Stoudemire, who coached super well tonight, was able to exploit Duke in ways I think no other team has this season. They were just killing us on the offensive side of the ball for a long, long time there in this game. Game felt like Duke was going to lose almost the entire second half until they were able to go out some runs. But what a gutsy win from Duke. I want to break this game down into two categories. We're just going to go the bad and the good. Normally start with the good. Going to start with the bad today. I want to wrap up on all the good things we saw out of Duke today with this just crazy gutsy win. But let's start with the bad. And the first thing I have to say is the thing that maybe defined this game for Georgia Tech was how bad Duke was at defending the pick and roll offense. And it's important to note, in case you weren't able to watch the game, Mark Mitchell it was decided that he was not able to go shortly before the game. I think today, day of the game, only hours before we found out Mark Mitchell wasn't going to be able to go. Our starters were 4 guards and flip. It was McCain, Proctor, Roach, Foster, and then Kyle Filipowski, so 4 guards and 1 center. A lineup that they said on the broadcast had only got 5 minutes of playing time together before tonight. Obviously a difficult mountain to climb when you're missing him. Him also being our best defensive player, and I think a guy that shuts down a lot of Georgia Tech's pick and roll and three-point offense if he's in. But disregard, he was out today, and Georgia Tech was able to exploit us by doing kind of short pick and rolls that resulted in either short mid-range jumpers around the free throw line or kickouts to open guys on the three-point line, in particular in the corner or on the wing. And Georgia Tech, man, it felt like they ran that play 50 times today, and just about every time it was successful. And I think a primary reason of it is because just Georgia Tech is a very athletic team. They do have some really athletic guys, and with the size of Mark Mitchell being out of this game, it allowed the athletes of Georgia Tech to go up against some of the smaller Duke guards, and that didn't lead for great opportunities for Duke defensive stops. Because when you have a guy like McCain switched off on a guy who's 6'6", even if McCain is playing great defense, gets a hand in the face, height still really makes a difference in that play, and they're able to hit contested mid-range jump shots consistently, which they did all game because of some of the athleticism Duke was losing with Mark Mitchell being out. I'm not sure how serious the injury to Mitchell was. They seem to say that it wasn't that serious, but I just saw a Shire quote after the game that they're not even sure he's going to be able to go next week. Duke doesn't play again for a full 7 days. We play Pitt, who we just played. We play them again at Cameron 7 days from now, Saturday. They said he's not even sure Mitchell's going to be able to play for that game, so I don't know. Maybe it is something a little more serious than what they were saying on the broadcast. Said it was a knee injury, not the same knee that's been bothering him for kind of his whole career at Duke, and they kind of that made him miss that game at Tennessee, the game where Duke was eliminated in the NCAA tournament last year. So it seems to be positive news, as positive as an injury can be. Hopefully we get him back. But the bad has to start with that. That was Georgia Tech's primary way of getting points in this game. And the other way they were getting points was with their three-point shooting. I'll sprinkle bits of this throughout the whole team. Georgia Tech is a team that shoots 30% from three. Tonight, they shot 55%. And that was as high as 61% late into the second half. And they missed, a three when the game was over, and they missed another three late in the game. So that their shooting was even better than that 55% says. They were just on fire, unconscious, any words you want to insert there from the three-point line tonight. They were simply making every shot they needed to make to win this game. It felt like a game where, this is an unranked team that gets hot against a team that's obviously better than them, and they win. Very similar situation happened to Purdue. I believe the top team in the country at the time when they went and played Nebraska. Nebraska ended up shooting, I believe, 57 or around that amount from three, and Purdue was unable to overcome that and lost on the road to Nebraska. Very much felt like one of those games where, hey, this is just an example of a game that Georgia Tech they're going to have a career game. A couple of their guys, I believe, what's his name, the George kid for Georgia Tech went, I believe, 3 for 6, 50% from three. He is this season he's shooting 19% from three for Georgia Tech, and tonight he was on fire from beyond the arc, especially early in this game. Until the very end, he was making them at even a higher clip. But they were just, Georgia Tech did everything they needed to do, I think, in their minds to win this game. Duke was just the team that battled harder and came out on top and just made more clutch shots at the end, made more free throws at the end. Duke just did what they needed to win. But, man, from a game plan strategy, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, if I was a Georgia Tech fan, I'm sitting here thinking, what else could we have done to beat this Duke team? And I don't think there's anything you can say. Everything went right for Georgia Tech in this game. This felt like a game, once again, Duke was supposed to lose. I said that once again when we played against Notre Dame. It was for a different reason then. Against Notre Dame, it was because our stars played really bad. This game, it was not the case. Flip had maybe one of his best games as a Blue Devil ever. I know I just said that last week. But it was this week, it was because of their shooting and their ability to score that they feel like they really probably should have won that game, and they're unable to pull it out at the end. But continuing on with the bad, free throws were as dominant as usual. Still finished shooting, I believe, 71% from the line, 20 for 28. Still a percentage you'll take, but the ones that missed, I think Flip split a couple. McCain missed 2 free throws in this game, which he's only missed 2, I believe, the whole season before entering today, and he misses 2 tonight. I believe one of them was the front end of a 1-and-1. So kind of a rougher free throw shooting night for Duke than usual, but still making 20 for 28 is a percentage you can live with if that's a bad night for you. I want to say the only player I kind of want to highlight in the bad, and again, no disrespect to this guy, but Caleb Foster didn't have his best game. He only had 3 points, which was a 1 3-point make early in the game. Other than that, he finished 1 for 3, only shot the ball 3 times, did finish with 2 rebounds and 4 assists, 1 steal, so good numbers there. But again, we talked about this last episode. Foster is a guy where when he has a bad game, he's not typically blowing the game for you by chucking up a bunch of bad shots. He's just a guy that kind of sometimes can fade away into the rest of the offense and where you're not really noticing him that much. But the biggest negative, I think, for Foster this game is that he had 2 really costly fouls on Georgia Tech shooters late in this game. One of them being a 3-point attempt that sent a Georgia Tech shooter to the line for 3 points late into the game. Luckily, he missed one of those, turning it into not as bad of a foul as it could have been. And then another one, he gave up an and one to the George kid on Georgia Tech really late into the game when it felt like if Duke gets a stop, they were going to win. Caleb Foster gives up an and one in the middle of the paint to a smaller guard. Not things you want to see from him, but I know he'll grow and get better from that. His defense is something that I have not hated on the season as of late. I don't think he's a defensive stopper yet. I think he has the potential to be, and I think as he grows as a player, that part of his game will grow. Sometimes defense is I would say most of the times defense is harder to pick up for these high school guys than offense is. A lot of them come into college basketball really knowing how to score, but not knowing how to defend really well, and that might be the case for Foster. Just today didn't have his best defensive game. Also want to say our offensive struggles late in the first half and early in the second were a big problem in this game. Duke started this game hot, and we got up by as much as 10 really, really early. Now, Georgia Tech was still shooting the ball really well, but so was Duke, and they were just scoring at will on offense. Kyle Filipowski was getting one-on-ones, and he was converting those into easy buckets. And, it was a game where, I'm sitting here at the beginning thinking everything's going right for Georgia Tech, and Duke is up 10 right now. Duke's up 9, 8 right now. We're going to blow these guys out when they start to struggle. But that struggle really never came for Georgia Tech, but it did come for Duke. Duke slowed down a lot. Flip was still putting up a lot of shots, but just missing shots he normally makes, and some of the Georgia Tech athletic defenders were giving him problems in the post when he wasn't able to go one-on-one. So that happened a lot late in the first half, and then in the second half, Duke just came out really flat, especially on defense. Georgia Tech was able to build a little bit of a lead, and I think that negativity on defense led to a stagnant offense where there was no movement and missing easy shots. That's been kind of a kryptonite for Duke's offense this year. When you see all the guys just standing around, not moving a lot, it's a pretty good sign that that offensive possession is not going to go well. And I sat there watching offensive possessions in the beginning of the second half, and it felt like we just got back to playing iso ball with no movement, and the shot clock winds down, and you end up 8 seconds left in the shot clock, and a guy's taking a contested runner in the lane, and those rarely go in for Duke this season. When Duke was able to turn this game around, I actually think it was because of the energy they created on defense, getting out to run in transition and getting easy points, easy layups and ones, and also three-pointers in transition, which also led to a better half-court offense from Duke. I think just getting that confidence of seeing the ball go through the hoop. The last thing I've got in the bad is just injuries. I already said it. Mark Mitchell out for the entire duration of this game. I think that definitely changes the footprint of the game. I don't think Georgia Tech scores nearly as many points if Mark Mitchell is guarding. He is our most big and athletic defender, the best defender on this team probably, and missing him obviously creates a lot of mismatches for the athletic wings of Georgia Tech, which they had several of tonight that were making all of their shots. And then Jeremy Roach. Jeremy Roach was a guy who I'm going to talk about in the good category, who had a great game tonight, and on one of the most important buckets of the game, a transition layup from Roach. He just tweaked his right knee a little, came down a little hard on it, instantly was hobbling, was able to play the next few possessions, but then after a few, he hobbled back to the bench for a minute and then went back to the locker room. He was able to come back and even check back into the game a couple minutes later, not that long later, played a couple of possessions and then hobbled back to the bench again. So maybe, hopefully that's nothing too bad. The fact that he was able to check back into the game gives me some confidence that he'll be able to go next Saturday, but we'll just have to see. I mean, some of these injuries, the ones that don't look bad sometimes are the worst, and the ones that look bad, they come out of the locker room and play the rest of the game as if it didn't happen. So we're definitely hoping nothing's wrong with Roach. I don't think there is. It didn't look like anything crazy on the court. Just looked like he kind of just had an awkward landing and maybe tweaked his knee in the wrong way. Could have went up into his thigh as well. Don't want to diagnose anything. Obviously not my specialty, but we're hoping Roach is good. And again, I think the medical staff would have kept him out of this game if they would have thought it's something super serious. Because, even if we drop this game to Georgia Tech, losing Jeremy Roach for several games would be not a good price to pay, even for winning this game. So, Roach goes down, Mark out for the whole game. Got to have those guys back healthy. I don't know if we need both of them to beat Pitt again. I definitely think Pitt's going to come out with a lot of energy after we just swamped them at their place. Don't know if we need both of them necessarily just to win that game, but boy, do they help. And, especially with how Mark is revealed to be so important on a defensive side of the ball for Duke. You really hope he's ready to go, and Roach has been our most consistent guard on the season. even with the emergence somewhat of Tyrese Proctor scoring tonight. But that leads me into the good. And this was a game, like I said at the beginning, with a ton of storylines and a ton of momentum shifts. But there was one consistent factor through it all, and that's was Flip was balling the entire game. Let me just read Flip's stat line to you. Finally got 30 points, a career high for Filipowski. He's flirted with it for a long time in his post-game interview in the locker room. He said he'd been flirting with 30 points for a long time, was finally able to get there tonight. But he finished with 30 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and only 2 fouls. A truly first-team All-American performance from Filipowski. I will argue, I do think probably his game against Pitt was better, just from an efficiency standpoint. He did shoot 10 for 24, not the percentage you really want to see from him. Still not bad, but he was, late in that first half, early in the second, he was putting up a lot of shots that weren't falling, and that really hurt his percentage. What didn't hurt his percentage is that he went 4 for 5 from 3, and each of those were just massive, massive threes where it felt like Duke was down and out, and we needed a bucket to score, and Flip was able to hit a 3 to get us back into it. Duke actually finished the game shooting 47% from 3, which is a massive, massive development for this team. You guys have heard me on this podcast before talk about how I think maybe the biggest problem for this team was their inability to make three-point shots in big games. And I know, look, Georgia Tech on the schedule is not a big game, but if you're watching this game and you see how close it is, the three-point shots Duke were shooting tonight felt as important as any of the three-point shots we've shot all season, and we were able to hit at a 47% clip. The three-point shooting, I think, is finally really starting to click for this Duke Blue Devil team, and it certainly has clicked for Kyle Filipowski in the past few games. So, man, what can you say about Flip over the past 2? This has been a crazy, historic 2-game run for Filipowski, and you can put these 2 games in a row up against nearly any big man in history, 2 games in a row at Duke, and Flip would be right up there with the best of them. And he was a steady force throughout this game. He was the star that Duke needs him to be, and it's just encouraging to see him dominate like he is now. Hopefully that continues. If we're going to get where we want to go, which is a Final Four and a potential national championship, Flip is going to have to play like a first-team All-American, and for the past few games he has. Also want to say, besides Flip, the rest of this game was determined by single players taking over the game at different points in the game. The first one to do that, other than Flip, again, Flip's the constant throughout all this. He was good the whole night. But the other players, Roach was the first one. Roach was the guy that was in the first half and even early in the second that was keeping Duke in it and getting them back into it. He's always steady. He finished the game with a good stat line, especially for being out as long as he was. 18 points. 1 rebound, 3 assists, 2 steals, only 1 turnover, and 3 fouls for him. Did shoot 5 for 12, 2 for 4 on his threes, which is great. But Roach was Jeremy Roach of this year. This is the Jeremy Roach we've been used to seeing this year. A always calming presence, a guy that when you feel the game slipping a little bit for Duke, Jeremy Roach is the guy you want to get the ball to. And he created several opportunities off those turnovers. Again, he had 2 steals, and 2 of those, I believe they both came in quick succession when there was a point in the game Georgia Tech was able to go up 10 points. And immediately Duke responded, and I think cut the lead to 2, and the game was that close the rest of the way. And a huge reason for that run was Duke's defensive intensity, and a big part of that was Jeremy Roach's ability to steal the ball and get easy breakaway layups, one of which was an and one in which he converted the three-point play. Roach was a steady forward for us. But then he goes down, right? Another storyline of this game. Duke's second best player to that point, the guy that was arguably getting us back into the game, maybe even more than Flip was in that moment, and he goes down with a knee injury. So what happens? I just think at this point in the game, it's when I'm watching this game on the couch tonight thinking, after Roach goes down, I'm thinking we drop this. At that point, I half thought Duke was going to lose this thing the whole second half until we went on that big run. But especially when Roach goes down, you're just thinking, man, we were just getting back into it. And now, Roach goes down. He's the guy that's been creating a ton of offense for us. It would have been so easy for Duke to just say, you know what, one of our captains, Roach, is out. get demotivated and just chuck up bad shots and pray that you make them, and then just try and get out of here and say, the injuries really hurt us today. That's why we lost. But that's not what Duke did. Tyrese Proctor, the sophomore captain, stepped up today in a way that he has not this season. He finished the game with 17 points, 5 for 10 shooting, 3 for 5 from 3, perfect from the line, which was important, and 2 assists and only 1 foul from Proctor. And all of those, I believe, it felt like nearly all of those points came after Roach went down. Roach went down, and I think Proctor hit 2 threes immediately, and then assisted on a Ryan Young bucket and maybe made another layup himself. Just a crazy clinic from Proctor. There was a stretch, I think, where he made a 3, it basically forced a turnover on the defensive side, made another shot. I mean, it was like 8 unanswered points for him in the most pivotal part of the game, when it would have been easy for Duke to lay down and just take their loss and get out of there with the tail between their legs and blame it on injuries. Proctor was not going to let that happen tonight, and he stepped up in a way he hasn't this year. And we've talked about it so far. Proctor going down, being great for the freshman. Is this the game that, even if it's just for the second half of this game, is this the game that because Roach goes down, Proctor was the one who had to step up and make plays, and he did, and maybe we're about to see a run from him. Maybe he comes out against Pitt and has another 15-point performance because of the confidence he now feels after Roach went down and after making some huge plays. But it can't be understated how impressed I am with Proctor and the rest of the team during that stretch when Roach went down. It was so easy for in those moments to just get down and defeated when one of your best players goes down and you're already down in a game. You already feel like you've been beaten up a little bit. It's so easy to just lay down and lose, and they didn't do that. I also want to point out Ryan Young had some huge moments in this game. Ryan Young finished with 10 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block today. And that even, I don't think it justifies how well he played tonight. There were some times defensively he was getting exploited, but man, he was coming down with a ton of rebounds today. Let's see, 4 of those were offensive, 5 defensive, 4 offensive boards. Just huge for him in this game. And defensively, he was able to stop the bleeding on the pick and roll offense from Georgia Tech a little today. When he came into the game, he did give Duke a little bit more size, which I think forced Georgia Tech into some tougher shots, especially at the basket, which was forcing more misses, where he was able to get the rebound and start the break for Duke. Ryan Young was also the beneficiary of a lot of great passes from Tyrese Proctor and Kyle Filipowski, where he was just left open underneath the basket, but you still have to convert those shots with a little bit of contact, and Ryan Young converted them tonight and hit some free throws in the clutch. Let's see. He finished perfect from the line, 2 for 2. Those were big free throws at a big point in the game. He converted all of his open layups, which he's missed some early in this year. He's missed a lot of shots, I think, that he tell you he needs to make. But Brian just had an awesome game today, and we needed him to. Defensively and offensively, he was putting it in today. I also want to point out Jalen Blakes didn't finish with a great stat line. I don't think he didn't score in this game. Only played 10 minutes, 0 for 1. 1 rebound, 1 assist, but gosh, did he affect it more than that. And a big part of that was when Duke made that run. Georgia Tech, I think, hit maybe a 3 to go up 10, and then instantly Duke just ramped up the defensive pressure, and he was a huge part of that. Created turnovers, and we cut the lead to 2, and from then on, it was a 50-50 game all the way until the end when Duke was ran away with it a little bit. But enough can't be said about the way Blakes plays defense, and the intensity and the spark he gives to this team speaks volumes beyond the stat lines, and he had a good day today. I don't care what the numbers say. And that's kind of my last individual things to say about the good, but just to kind of wrap things up for us today. Look, I know this wasn't supposed to be this close of a game, but when you're missing two of your best players, 2 of your most critical players, I would argue Mark Mitchell, even without being necessarily one of our best guys, quote unquote, he's definitely one of the most critical to lose on the defensive side. When you lose him for the whole game, when you lose Jeremy, when the opposing team who shoots 30% from 3 hits 60% the whole game, you're going to have to dig deep and really grind out a gutsy win. We've seen other teams ranked higher than Duke this week in college basketball lose games just like this. The Purdue-Nebraska game comes to mind, where, Purdue's this massive favorite. They're on the road, which is opposite to this game, but they've got the player of the year probably on their team in Zach Edey. Nebraska comes out and drains 57%, I think, of their threes and beats down Purdue at home. This felt like the exact same script, except Duke was actually missing 2 players in the most important stretches of the game. Georgia Tech, they don't shoot the ball well from 3 all season. They come into Cameron, they shoot 60% the whole game. Felt like a game Duke was supposed to lose, and they grinded out a gutsy win. And what separates great teams from good teams is the ability to win and close out these games that get close in the end. And Duke was able to do that today. And I don't care if it's too close. I don't care what the spread was. I don't care what we were supposed to win by. Duke comes out with a win, and that is all that matters right now, is getting these wins in January. This had the feel of a typical Duke January loss to a team you're not supposed to lose to, who just catches their hair on fire shooting from all around the court, and Duke was still able to win. And like I said at the beginning of the show, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, if you're the Georgia Tech coach, I think you're sitting there thinking, we did everything right to win this game. Everything went right for us to win this game, and Duke still won. And that's the most important thing about this game, and that's the thing that Duke is going to have to do Duke is going to have to do moving forward continually, especially if we're going to be without Mark Mitchell for the next game. So that's all I have for you today. Great Duke basketball win. I don't care that it's Georgia Tech. This game felt like a Final Four game, except that Georgia Tech has lost like 4 of their last games in a row, which is just crazy. I don't know what they take before they play Duke. Whatever they do, they should just start doing that every game. I don't know why they only do it against us. But gosh, did this game feel like a battle that Duke was able to pull out. But again, great win for Duke. And I don't care what the numbers say. This is a good gutsy win and a great sign moving forward for this Duke Blue Devil team. That's all I got for you today. If you want to help out the show, you can leave us a rating wherever you're listening, or follow me over on Twitter at Duke Blue Central. It's been good talking to you today. Last but certainly not least, go Blue Devils.